I'm Dr. James Patterson, and in this video I want to talk about paragraphs. I'm basically teaching overall the concept of academic writing, writing that you will be doing at the college and university as you work on your bachelor's degree or the equivalent. Today I want to talk about paragraphs. A paper of whatever length is built out of paragraphs. So in this video I want to talk about 4 types of paragraphs. First, let me begin with a definition. This is a definition of a paragraph from the Longman Dictionary. It reads, a paragraph is, quote, a group of several sentences that start on a new line and deal with one idea in a piece of writing, end quote. Robert Miles, in his book First Principles of the Essay, talks about the concept of the paragraph idea as central to the formation of the paragraph. Kersner and Mandel, in their Holt Handbook, say that, quote, paragraphs have 3 important functions. Function number 1, they join sentences together into a unit. Number 2 function, they provide visual breaks in the text. And number 3, paragraphs provide an indication of the progression of ideas. Paragraphs join sentences together around a paragraph idea, one idea. That idea is typically identified by a topic sentence when we're talking about body paragraphs. So let's start with there. Every paper is going to have an introduction. Every paper is going to have a conclusion. What you're building in the meat of your paper is the body, and it's built of body paragraphs. So, Kersner and Mandel in their Holt Handbook say, quote, a paragraph is well developed when it includes all the support it needs to communicate its main idea. Some students come out of secondary or high school teaching and they've been taught that every body paragraph needs to have X number of sentences. I've seen high school teachers who teach a 7-sentence paragraph. I know of one high school teacher that teaches an 11-sentence paragraph. I typically say in an academic writing paper, each paragraph should have a minimum of 3 because you want to have your topic sentence and then at least 2 supporting sentences. But a paragraph is well developed when it includes everything it needs to communicate the idea. All right, individual paragraphs, body paragraphs, and then the body of your paper can serve different functions. If you are introducing a concept in your nursing classes or introducing a concept in your administration of justice classes, you may have one paragraph that provides a definition of the key term that you're working with in the paper. That one paragraph would be a definition paper. But you might also want to then contrast or compare one idea with another idea, so another paragraph could be a comparison and or contrast paragraph. So I want you to understand that paragraphs can be written in different functions as they progress through your paper. All right. Typically, in academic writing, a body paragraph begins with a topic sentence. One way to revise your paper is to read your thesis statement, read the first sentence of each body paragraph, and then read your conclusion. If that all makes sense, you're off to a great start. So typically, a body paragraph is going to begin with a topic sentence. Typically, the writer is going to include anywhere from 2 to 7 sentences which develop and or support the topic that was identified in the topic sentence. And typically, the paragraph will end with either a concluding sentence or a transition sentence. Now, having said that, let me caution you. If you are going to start each body paragraph with a topic sentence, ending a paragraph with a transition sentence becomes repetitive and redundant because you're ending a paragraph by talking about what you're going to talk about in the next paragraph, and then the next paragraph begins with the topic sentence, which identifies what you're going to be talking about in that paragraph. So I caution students with ending body paragraphs with transition sentences if you are starting each body paragraph with a topic sentence. All right, that's body paragraphs. Let's focus for a moment on introductory paragraphs. All right, Kersner and Mandel in the Holt Handbook say, quote, "An introduction prepares readers for the essay to follow. It draws readers into an essay, arousing their interest and making them want to read further." That's a good paragraph, but let me kind of challenge that. Because when you're writing academic writing at the university, in your classes and courses in your field of study, you don't have to worry about getting your reader's attention. Your reader is your professor or teaching assistant. They are familiar with the assignment. They gave the assignment. They're ready to see what you understand about the assignment. So you do not need to spend a lot of time worrying about getting your reader's attention. You will have your reader's attention because they assigned the paper for you. But an introductory paragraph does need to accomplish three things. You need to start, and typically that's an opening statement, and we can talk about those later. You need to identify the topic of your paper and the purpose. Is it going to be an informational paper? Is it going to be a persuasive paper? Is it going to do something else? And then I always encourage my students to preview the organization of the paper. There are a lot of English professors out there who hate those preview statements, but they're reading short essays. If you're reading a short 5-paragraph essay, the preview is meaningless because you've got 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, 3 paragraph, and then you're in conclusion. So then it becomes repetitive. But when you're writing an 8-page paper or longer, the preview sort of outlines ahead of time for your reader what your main points are going to be. It makes it easier for your reader then to recognize when the reader when you are closing one idea and moving on to the next idea. That preview of your main ideas at the front is very helpful to the readers. All right, I mentioned there are different kinds of ways of opening your paper. So here are a couple. Many students have been taught an effective way to begin a paper is to open with a question. Yes, it's a good tactic, it's a good structure, and if you cannot think of anything else, you can always open with a question. Recognize though, if you're in a chemistry class writing a paper for your chemistry professor and you start with a question, it's probably going to be a rather trite, childlike, innocent, elementary question. So questions can backfire on you. Another way of opening a paper is to start with a quote from one of your sources in your paper. That way you're starting with an expert statement about the topic that you're going to be addressing in the paper. You can start with statistics. Again, if it's an administration of justice class, if it's a psychology major, if it's a sociology major, starting with statistics is again a good way to grab your reader and pull them into your paper. One way out there of opening a paper is to start with a shocking statement. Shocking statements can work very well, but again, when you're writing for your professors in your major field of study and it's an academic paper, they want you to do is demonstrate that you understand the topic, that you've thought about the topic, that you're continuing to think about the topic. A shocking statement sometimes will feel off. Sometimes you can start with a narrative, tell a story. You can start with a personal reference or a reference to the occasion. This paper is being written as part of my final project in this class. That's a reference to the occasion. And then last but not least, one of the opening strategies out there is to start with humor. Humor has been referred to as a two-edged sword. It can cut both ways. Humor can work very well if your professor has a sense of humor. Humor can work very badly if your professor does not have a sense of humor. So the use of humor really needs to be specific to the instructor in the class. But those are some opening strategies. Then you need to give a thesis statement. Alan Myers, in his book Composing with Confidence, says, quote, "The thesis statement must be broad enough to encompass the entire essay." That means when the reader has finished with the introductory paragraph, has read your thesis statement, there should be no surprises later when you bring in something else that is tangential. That needs to be encompassed. The thesis statement needs to let them know everything that's going to be in the paper. And it can be done very quickly. A thesis statement can be written as a single sentence, but a thesis also can be broken up into multiple sentences. I can have one short sentence that identifies my topic. I can have one short sentence that identifies that I'm going to be persuading or presenting an argument. And then I can have another sentence or two or three or four identifying what the main aspects of the paper are going to be dealing with. All right. Introductory paragraphs, body paragraphs. There are also concluding paragraphs. Every paper will have an introduction. Every paper will have a body. Every paper will have a conclusion. In your conclusion, Kersner and Mendel, in their Holt handbook, say, quote, "A conclusion should be a complete paragraph that gives readers a sense of closure," end quote. So you don't want to simply stop writing. You want to bring your reader to closure. And a concluding paragraph should typically review or summarize your main point or restate your thesis or argumentative claim, and it should provide some closure. In other words, when the reader gets to the last word in the last paragraph, we should recognize that we're not expecting anything more. Okay, so we've talked about introductory paragraphs, body paragraphs, and concluding paragraphs. Every paper will have those three. There's a fourth type of paragraph that I want to talk about quickly, and that's going to be useful to you when you're writing longer papers. When the papers you're writing are 12 pages, 15 pages, 20 pages, etc. The longer papers need that fourth type of paragraph, and it's called a transition paragraph. Kersner and Mendel, again from their Holt handbook, say, quote, "A longer essay frequently includes one or more transitional paragraphs whose function is to connect one section of the essay to another," end quote. So here's what a transition paragraph needs to have. It needs to have a sentence that tells the reader, I'm done talking about the point that I've just been talking about. There needs to be one sentence that introduces the general topic of the next section of the paper, and there needs to be at least one sentence that connects or builds a bridge between those two ideas. That helps your reader close the mind on the previous section and prepare to start reading a different section. Okay, paragraphs. Introductory paragraphs, concluding paragraphs, body paragraphs, and you will start using transition paragraphs when your papers get longer and longer. Let me say this, as you're writing those longer papers for your professors at the university, please be respectful of their time. Shorter sentences read faster. Shorter paragraphs read faster. So a paper will read more quickly and smoothly if you are using shorter sentences and shorter paragraphs. I have a colleague who teaches her students that every page should have at least one paragraph break. I'll recall back to the beginning, I said, Kersner and Mendel say that one of the functions of a paragraph is to provide a visual break for the reader. And so she teaches her students that every page should have at least one paragraph break. Thank you and best wishes.